Hello, I'm Charles Gibson, and this is the day it happened, the Columbine shootings. It started with gunshots in the schoolyard just before lunchtime, and then the carnage moved inside. For more than 4 hours on that Tuesday, Columbine High School near Littleton, Colorado, became a killing ground. 2 students murdered 13 people and wounded another 33 with gunfire and pipe bombs. The day it happened was April 20th, 1999. Peter Jennings started his reporting on the telephone.
This is an ABC News special report. From ABC News World Headquarters, here is Peter Jennings.
Deputy Davis, we're picking up snatches of information from a variety of sources. Let me play them to you and tell me if you can confirm or deny them.
All right.
That there are at least 2 gunmen in the building holding some students hostage.
We feel that there are at least 2 gunmen. The hostages, I cannot confirm. I don't know that to be a fact.
Do you believe there are students at various locations still inside the high school?
There certainly could be, but I don't know that to be a fact.
Do you know how many students outside the high schools have actually been injured?
It's my understanding that 3 have been transported to area hospitals and that there are more victims. Their status is unknown, however.
Do you know of any students still in the high school to have been injured and are still in the high school?
I don't know that. I can't confirm that. However, we have 4 SWAT teams that are working in the school now to clear that school.
Anything else I've missed in asking you what's going on?
It's just a little sketchy at this time. It's still a situation that we're working, so information is still coming in as we are on scene now, Peter.
I very much appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are. Sarah Spalding is a spokesperson for Swedish Hospital in Denver, where at least, Sarah, I believe, 3 students who've been injured have been taken?
We currently have 4, Peter.
Right. Can you tell me what their condition is?
Sure. We have 2 girls and 2 boys. They're all in serious condition. We have 1 young woman who has at least 9 gunshots to her chest, another young woman with just 1 gunshot to the chest. And one of the boys has been shot in the back, and the 4th boy was shot to the chest and arm.
I know the circumstances probably don't warrant it. Were they able to tell you anything about what had happened inside?
No, actually, we've been working very hard to get their names, addresses, phone numbers to enable us to contact their families. That's really, we're focused on that and taking care of these kids.
I appreciate you taking the time. Sarah Spalding at Swedish Hospital and Deputy Davis at the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. We've got one of the young students on tape here now, David Mesh, who I talked to just a moment ago. We might listen to him as we watch this unfold. As in previous occasions around the country, we have seen so many of these incidents since the beginning of the 1990s. The enormous question is why. There is no apparent answer here yet. Too much chaos in a situation that is moving too rapidly. David?
Yes.
My first question, your mom works in the school. Have you been in touch with her?
No, but I talked to my dad, and he has talked to her, and says she's all right.
Okay, that's the main thing. Now, where were you when this happened?
I was in the cafeteria.
And did gunmen or boys show up in the cafeteria?
Yes, I saw 2. And they were wearing all black and masks and everything.
And what happened when they showed up?
They just came in, and they started shooting, and I heard everybody was saying, get down, and me and my friend Zach were getting our food at lunch, and so we just got down, and then they started telling us to evacuate to the auditorium, and so we ran that way, and I looked back, and I saw a bomb or a grenade or something go off underneath the car, and then we ran into the auditorium and up the stairs, and we ran out of the school, and I looked back, and I saw him again, and so me and my friend Zach just ran and took off to his car, and we left.
David Mesh, a student we talked to just a short while ago, but we will continue to keep you as closely up to date as we can. Our thanks to our affiliate in Denver, who have been able to keep us up to date visually throughout this and repertorially as well. Columbine High School, Littleton, Colorado, at least 8 injured, taken to various hospitals, 2 young men now taken. Is that all of them? We've heard reports of 2 gunmen. We've heard reports of 3. Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you later. I'm Peter Jennings.
This is an ABC News special report. From ABC News World Headquarters, here is Peter Jennings.
Good evening, everybody. As you know, it has been a day of horror in Littleton, Colorado, just south of Denver, Colorado. It's a suburb where just before the lunch break today at Columbine High School, at least 2 young men, perhaps students, perhaps former students, went in and began firing on the students who live there. Late today, when it was apparently over, after this kind of chaos throughout the day, the sheriff came out and told us that at least he believed 25 students had been killed, and 2 of the gunmen, as I said, perhaps students or former students, may have committed suicide. The sheriff in the county said it was an act of suicide. We interrupt our programming now because President Clinton is going to come out and talk briefly to the nation. It is only 6 months since he spoke to the nation once before on this deep commitment he and the government say they have to trying to stop the crimes in high schools around the country. So we'll be joined by him in just a moment. Tom Foreman, our correspondent, has been on the scene all day. Tom, in about a minute before the president comes, can you give us the latest?
The latest, Peter, is that people here are still reeling from this, just stunned at the numbers that came out. All day long, an awful lot of people thought that there were only perhaps going to be a few fatalities out of this, and as terrible as that would be, to hear that there are 25 fatalities is just stunning to people. That may include some teachers, from what people have said. The chaos down there is impossible to overstate, Peter. This afternoon, students were going everywhere, parents were going everywhere, teachers were going everywhere, trying to find each other, trying to figure out what was going on. The police were trying to contain the situation, and they didn't know for sure if they had 2 gunmen or more. So it was a very busy, very chaotic time, and the impact of this tragedy is just beginning to step in.
Thank you, Tom. Here's the president.
I want to begin by saying that Hillary and I are profoundly shocked and saddened by the tragedy today in Littleton, where 2 students opened fire on their classmates before apparently turning their guns on themselves. I have spoken with Governor Bill Owens and County Commission Chair Patricia Holloway and expressed my profound concern for the people of Littleton. I have spoken to Deputy Attorney General Eric Holder, and who, along with Attorney General Reno, is closely monitoring the situation. I've asked the Attorney General and the Secretary of Education to stand ready to assist local law enforcement, the schools, the families, the entire community during this time of crisis and sorrow. A crisis response team is ready now to travel to Colorado, and I strongly believe that we should do whatever we can to get enough counselors to the families and the children as quickly as possible. I know the other communities that have been through this are also ready to do whatever they can to help. I think that Patricia Holloway would not mind if I said that amidst all the turmoil and grief that she and others are experiencing, she said to me just a moment ago that perhaps now America would wake up to the dimensions of this challenge if it could happen in a place like Littleton, and we could prevent anything like this from happening again. We pray that she is right. We don't know yet all the hows or whys of this tragedy. Perhaps we may never fully understand it. St. Paul reminds us that we all see things in this life through a glass darkly, that we only partly understand what is happening. We do know that we must do more to reach out to our children and teach them to express their anger and to resolve their conflicts with words, not weapons. And we do know we have to do more to recognize the early warning signs that are sent before children act violently. To the families who have lost their loved ones, to the parents who have lost their beloved children, to the wounded children and their families, to the people of the community of Littleton, I can only say tonight that the prayers of the American people are with you. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, there seems to be an epidemic of these kinds of incidents now. There was Paducah, Kentucky, Jonesboro, Arkansas, Springfield, Oregon, and several others. Would you characterize this as an epidemic affecting the nation's school system?
I wouldn't want to use that word. What I would like to know is whether we can take it, we can learn enough from this, which in its dimensions apparently is much greater than even the others were, and see what else we can do. I had a very interesting conversation this afternoon with Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy, whom, as all of you know, lost her own husband, and son sustained a wound as a result of the shooting incident on a commuter train. And that's what we talked about. And I think tonight we owe it to the people of Littleton and to the families involved in this tragedy to let them go through the grieving and deal and try to get the facts. And then the rest of us have a responsibility to do everything we can to make sure this doesn't make 1999 a year like last year, that we don't have another rash of this, that we really can be more effective in preventing it. And I wish I could say more tonight, but I don't think I can.
Mr. President, have you been told, sir, that the death toll is as high as the 25 figure that we've heard? And secondly, sir, every time one of these things happens, we go through this course of hand-wringing and say, we've got to stop it from happening again. Is there anything specific and concrete that you'd like to see happen that hasn't happened yet?
Well, I don't want to make it. There are, but what I would like to do is take a couple of days, because we don't know what the facts are here. And keep in mind, the community is an open wound right now. They have suffered as much as anyone can suffer. This is the largest group of fatalities, whatever the numbers are. And I've heard various numbers, even as much as 5 minutes ago, right before I came out. I'd like to answer that question, but I think anything I say tonight could only add to the pain of the people in Littleton and not serve to solve the problem. So I will answer that question when I have more facts and after we let a little time pass.
President Clinton being called on tonight to do what presidents do on occasions like this, try to bind the wounds, not only tonight in Littleton, Colorado, but a wound that the whole nation feels, and pointing out that we do not know all the facts or how deeply disaffected these students were, or why. There have been several hints in a variety of places today. They belong to something the local students referred to as the trench coat mafia, but as they appear to have either been shot or killed themselves in the course of a long siege with various SWAT teams going room to room throughout the high school today. Those answers will take a while, as the president makes it clear. A couple of friends of the gunman were apparently arrested outside the school today. We saw some visual evidence of that a little earlier on, so there may be some clue into these individuals, perhaps belonging to a larger group. But the president makes the point. The reporter who asked the question, was there anything the federal government could do to stop this, probably knew the answer before he asked the question. The president said he can do as much as he can to raise consciousness, send tonight a crisis response team to comfort the people of Littleton, Colorado. But beyond that, as we know from recent history, this kind of thing does happen. Nightline will take this up as a subject in depth tonight. Tomorrow, Good Morning America and World News Tonight will come from Colorado. I'm Peter Jennings. Good evening.
For continuing coverage of this story, stay with ABC News and abcnews.com, now part of the Go Network. This has been a special report from ABC News. April 20th, 1999.
Again, the scenes are familiar.
We saw the black guns come out of the trench coat, and that's when we knew it was real. And then when we heard the bullets whiz by us, we knew that we better get out of there.
But never on this scale. Up to 25 dead, nearly as many wounded.
Then they started yelling again for everyone to get down, and then we knew that we were sitting ducks there.
And again, the questions of who and why.
They were known as the Trench Coat Mafia at our school, and the jocks, you know, ridiculed them quite a bit when they first walked in. They said if there's any jocks in here, they're dead.
I just think that tonight we need to focus on the families that lost their kids, on the children that are wounded, on the grieving of the community.
And I hope that we can find solace by sharing our grief together.
And now, Littleton. Tonight, a community and the nation more.
From ABC News, this is Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
Think about this. In 4 weeks of air action against Serbian targets in Yugoslavia and Kosovo, the U.S. military has yet to suffer a single casualty. In a few hours of mindless violence today at a suburban high school outside Denver, 2 kids are believed to have killed and wounded about 50 of their classmates and then killed themselves. As we all begin to process what happened and begin to wonder why, consider this. According to one of the students from Columbine High School, who'll be joining us in a few minutes, the shooters may have belonged to a group that was known as the Trench Coat Mafia. There were about 8 or 10 of them who wore black trench coats to school every day, no matter what the weather, and some of them used to draw swastikas on their body. It may or may not be relevant, but today, April 20th, would have been Adolf Hitler's 110th birthday. When you're trying to explain why high school students would blow away 25 or more of their classmates, wounding a similar number, one theory seems to be as good as the next. So what did happen today in Littleton, Colorado, this place that most of us had never heard of until today? Here's ABC correspondent Judy Muller.
Shortly after 11:15 Mountain Time, the first signs of trouble. Outside Columbine High School, in the parking lot, students hear the sound of gunfire.
And we looked over and we saw some guys peeking around the corner with guns. And we saw them shoot 3 people in the parking lot. And
That's when we knew it was real.
Yeah.
They saw the gunman throw grenades or pipe bombs on top of the school roof. A number of witnesses recognized the two as members of a group called the Trench Coat Mafia.
Yeah, they wear trench coats every day to school, and wear makeup and paint their nails and stuff. They're just I don't know, everyone kind of thinks of them as different, and they always just hang out with themselves only, kind of associate themselves with death and violence.
They always wear black clothing or dark clothing, glasses, berets. They get made fun of a lot.
Not a lot of kids like them.
Yeah.
They get made fun of a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, by other students sometimes.
11:30, the fire alarm was sounded. School teacher Paula Reed hustled her students out.
As I got outside the building, right outside the building, teachers and administrators were yelling to the kids, get them out of here, get them out of here, get them all the way to the park.
At first, she said, there was no panic.
Kids started to run out of the gymnasium saying there's people in there with guns. But the general reaction from most of the people around me was, yeah, right, because there are no guns to speak of at Columbine. At least that's our perception of things.
But many students were trapped inside the building. For the next hour and a half, the two gunmen made their lives hell as they roamed the hallways, classrooms, and cafeteria, firing in every direction.
I heard people pray for their husbands, their children, you name it. And at that point, these guys were killing just to kill.
Senior Nick Foss witnessed the horror before he managed to escape.
I've never seen so many dead people in my life, and some of my friends did. I've never seen someone's face shot off in front of me. It's not cool, not pretty. I can't get out of my head.
Some of the worst carnage was in the library.
There was a guy at a table right next to me and her, and they just shot him, and then walked away, and then he was just sitting there in a pool of blood.
We all got under the desk, and then they just started coming in the library and opening fire and shooting out bombs.
By noon, police SWAT teams had surrounded the building. They pulled students out whenever and however they could. One student who'd been wounded was pulled through a second-floor window. At a time when students would normally be finishing their lunch and returning to class, they were still fleeing, many taking refuge in nearby houses. The scene was chaos as paramedics tried to treat the wounded and parents tried to locate their children. Some of them were reunited at a nearby school. All the while, inside the Columbine High School, the shooting continued. At 12:15, the first of the wounded were taken to nearby hospitals. At approximately 1 p.m., nearly 1.5 hours after the shooting began, the SWAT team entered. Dozens of students ran out with their hands in the air. Police were wary that the gunman might try to escape by blending in with the crowd. As the afternoon wore on, the wait became excruciating for those parents who had still had no word of their children. Many of them gathered here at a local public library near the school, where lists had been posted of names of children who had called in to let their parents know they were all right. For those who could not find the name on the list they were looking for, it was a very, very long day. Between 2 and 4 p.m., the scene in this neighborhood was one of extremes. Joy when families were reunited, and despair when the minutes ticked by with no news. Every now and then, an official would read off an updated list of those found. Then, at 4:16 p.m., the sheriff held a news briefing to deliver the news everyone feared.
Well, we've transported initially 14 to local area hospitals with gunshot wounds, and we've had, what I understand, 25 additional victims that were deceased.
7 p.m. Parents, students, teachers, and neighbors gather at the Light of the World Catholic Church, just a few blocks from the high school. And throughout this stunned community, people were repeating the same thing that too many other communities have said in recent years.
I just keep thinking that this does not happen at our school, and that I'm going to wake up and this is going to be over. Because, God, not at Columbine, you know? It happens in some other school, somewhere else. It doesn't happen here.
Now that it has happened here, the gruesome but all too familiar denouement begins. The search for a motivation, the calls for tighter gun control, the counseling sessions at school, and the endless, endless grief. In Denver, I'm Judy Muller for Nightline.
Tomorrow morning's Denver Post identifies the two suspects as 18-year-old Eric Harris and 17-year-old Dylan Klebold. Both reportedly died of self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Joining us now from outside the scene of today's tragedy, John Stone, the Jefferson County Sheriff. Rough day, huh, Sheriff?
Rough day. Sad day for Colorado.
A sad day for the country. What is it that you can tell us about the situation inside that building now? Because I gather you still haven't been able to remove the bodies.
That's correct. We have an unsafe situation due to the amount of bombs we found in the school. We removed 12 of them out of there so far. We're running into booby traps at different locations due to the late hour here right now, and we're going to secure the site for the night. We can't even go in and remove bodies or do any of that identification because of the massive amount of ordnance that we run into in the building. It makes it an unsafe situation right now.
When you talk about bombs, what are you talking about? Pipe bombs or grenades?
I haven't seen any of the devices yet, but a lot of them are handmade devices, and but we've exploded several of them. We found them both outside in the parking lot of the school, outside of the school area, and so far a dozen of them in the school.
When you find them, and you've referred to booby traps, in what way are they set up to explode?
Well, we found one device on one of the suspects' cars that was set to detonate the gas tank as our officers were trying to secure it. We've got ordnance on the bodies of the suspects that needs to be deactivated before we can move those bodies.
So in other words, if I hear you correctly, before they killed themselves, they booby-trapped their own bodies?
That there's evidence of some of that on those bodies.
I did say before they killed themselves, and I think I have heard that, but I'd like to hear you confirm it. Are you satisfied that they committed suicide, or did they shoot one another?
We suspect that they probably killed themselves.
What is, have you been inside the building yourself, or has that been?
No, the only people we've got in the building were the SWAT units that went in and did the initial sweep, which took several hours. We've had 5 SWAT teams operating in there, including Denver Police Departments, the FBI's, our SWAT team, Arapahoe County, and it took us a considerable amount of time to do it because of the things we were running into we weren't expecting, like those bombs. We had explosions in the school upon our initial entry. We had our officers, the school resource officer and one of our motorcycle units in the initial entry exchange gunfire with one of the suspects. It was a very unsafe situation here.
Has anybody been hurt by any of the bomb explosions, or have in fact any of the bombs exploded?
We have had bomb explosions in the school, and as far as the scene, we have not been able to examine the bodies well enough to know whether they were hit by bomb fragments or by weapons fire, but there was considerable weapons fire as well as the bombs detonating in the school.
You've obviously got, Sheriff, a really terrible human tragedy on your hands there, but particularly tonight in the sense that all the parents whose children have not yet been identified, they can't know yet. I mean, they don't know for sure one way or the other. What's being done to help these folks through the night?
Well, we've had all of the victims' families and things over at one of the neighboring schools right now, and we've been briefing them as much as we possibly can on what's going on. We want to get this identification process done as soon as possible, but we want to do it safely. We don't need any more tragedies out here.
No, absolutely not. But when I say there's still this level of uncertainty, in other words, you don't know for sure who is dead in there, and all you've been able to do is, in a sense, identify people by process of elimination, I guess.
That's correct.
And are the parents, I don't even know what word to use. Are they satisfied with that? Are they able to put up with that?
Well, I think because of all that we've encountered here tonight and the fact that there's been people here who have been detonating the bombs, the community considers this a very real threat. We had another bomb that apparently went off as a diversion in another part of this neighborhood down here prior to our arrival. That could have been maybe to draw cars or something over to that scene.
You've had a couple of other arrests, I gather. Is it just because you feel these are people who were associated with the suspects, or that they themselves may be suspected of participating?
Well, we had three individuals we picked up that were dressed paramilitary, trying to get onto the school scene at the same time this was going on. From information we gathered, they are associated with these suspects, but whether they were part of this plot today still is to be determined. There's a lot of investigation to be done in this.
They're under arrest at the moment, or are they being held at the moment?
They were being held earlier. I haven't had a chance to check on the status of what exactly is going on with them right now.
All right, Sheriff Stone, it's good of you to have taken the time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
When we come back, we'll meet three of the students who witnessed today's horrific events. The two students believed to have done the shooting clearly belonged to a larger group. Tonight, Tim Foreman reports a lot of questions are being asked about the students with the black coats.
While SWAT teams were still trying to find the gunman inside the school, police outside were stopping several other students who were allegedly trying to get in. Witnesses say those students who were detained were also members of the gang known as the Trenchcoat Mafia. Nicole and Amanda Wiggin knew the gang members.
They just kind of walk around with big black trench coats and they play war in the school all the time.
What do you mean they play war?
They just pretend that they're in war. They usually have like just regular like small play guns or whatever and pretend that they're playing.
Columbine students say the gang was comprised of about a dozen teenagers. They were known to talk about violence and death and often threaten people, taking a particular dislike to minorities and athletes, but almost no one took the threat seriously.
We were just joking at the start of the year.
I'd always say that they'd do that, but I was just joking. I never actually thought they'd really do it.
Indeed, some students say even when gang members bragged about getting new guns and made a video about their guns in a class, they were largely considered a joke. The two students believed to be the gunmen were teased and ridiculed. Teachers say in that regard, this school was like any other.
Yeah, I could say that there would be some kids who feel very disassociated from the school, and that's hard for kids, especially at this age. But boy, if you had asked me yesterday if any of our kids would come in and shoot people.
Police say they never heard of the gang before today.
You know, I talked to some school officials, and they informed me that they hadn't had any problems with these two, and that there were no real disciplinary problems at all with them.
Tonight, police are searching the homes of the two young men they say were the gunmen, hoping to find some clue as to what triggered this extraordinary and terrible burst of violence.
There has been so much confusion here today, it's difficult to tell what all happened, but one young girl I spoke to said during the shooting, she heard the gunmen shouting at some of their victims as loud as they could, "This is what you get for the way you've treated us." Ted?
Tom, I gather you know this neighborhood particularly well.
Yeah, Ted, I live just a few miles away from here. I know a lot of the people who work in the school. I know some of the students who went to school there. I don't know any of the victims. But this is a neighborhood that's always had a very active school community. It's a park where people play with their kids right behind the school. It's been the kind of place that an awful lot of people move to in fact, thinking that they were getting away from this kind of violence in other areas. And people are very, very shocked and stunned tonight.
Can you think of any acts of violence that have taken place there at all over the past year or so?
None that were large enough that they would attract particular community interest. The high schools down here certainly have had some problems, as any high schools would in large areas or big high schools. But there haven't been any particular violent episodes right at that high school. There were a couple of shootings at a mall not terribly far from there over the past, I'd say, year and a half. But those seem to be isolated incidents, seem to involve different gang members as gang shootings seem to go. But nothing at the high school itself, and in fact, that's part of what has stunned so many people here, is they thought it was a good high school without these kind of problems, and of course it was a good high school. Nobody expected this to happen there.
Tom Foreman, thanks very much. And joining us now live from Denver, Littleton Fire Chief William Pessimir. His department got the first call to respond. And Dr. William Pfeiffer was on the scene, on a team rather, of 6 trauma surgeons from Swedish Medical Center who operated on 4 of the students today. Doctor, how are they doing?
Everybody's out of the OR. 2 of them are up on the floor, and 2 of them are in the intensive care unit, still in critical condition.
Talk for a moment about what happens when you get word of an event even similar to this, in the sense that you have numerous casualties or some people who are in grave danger. How does the hospital respond?
Well, we have a trauma team in the hospital at all times, comprised of not only an emergency room physician, but also a trauma surgeon. And they're there actually physically in the house 24 hours a day. Both of them have backups. There is a second surgeon very quickly available. Frequently, depending on the shift, there's a second and a third emergency physician there at all times. And then we go into our depth. On a situation like today, when they put the call out, we had 6 trauma surgeons there within about 25 minutes.
How do you make the decision as to where to take them?
Well, actually, we had an EMS officer that coordinated that decision with the local hospitals, and the local hospitals did a very good job of talking to each other to determine how many patients and how critical of a patient they could take. So that all went very smoothly in coordination with the EMS people on the scene and the 7 different hospitals that were used to transport patients to.
You and your unit were actually not just among the first, you were the first on the scene, weren't you?
Well, one of our rescue units was, I believe, was the first fire or EMS unit on the scene. They actually transported, I believe it was 3 of the initial patients that they found at the scene, I believe one of which was critical and 2 were serious, even as the police were exchanging gunfire with the shooters inside the building.
What did they think they were going to? I mean, what was the first word they got?
Well, the initial dispatch came in as a dispatch to shots fired and explosions at Columbine High School. So I think they had a pretty good idea of what they were getting into, and of course police units were at the scene at the same time they were.
Now, at a time like that, do your folks wait on the outside until the police bring out whoever is injured, or do they actually go into the building?
Well, they don't go into the building. In fact, that was one of our biggest concerns throughout the course of this incident, was coordinating the operations of the police SWAT teams with our fire and EMS personnel to make sure that the fire department personnel and the paramedics were always safe. And we tried to do that as much as we could. But initially, during the very first stages of the incident, there were 3 students who desperately needed help, and our paramedic rescue crews went in and got them out.
All right, Dr. Pfeiffer and Mr. Pessimir, thank you both very much indeed. I appreciate it. I know it's been a long, hard day for the 2 of you also. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
I am with 3 students who were in the thick of this yesterday. I am with Crystal Woodman. She is a junior at the high school, Columbine High School. I am also with Joshua Lapp, who is a sophomore, and Justin Woods, who is a freshman. And Justin, let me start with you. I gather you were out playing soccer when all this began?
Yes, sir. I was playing soccer with a bunch of my friends. We saw windows start getting shot out. We saw 2 gunmen come out, and they threw some kind of like a firecracker or a pipe bomb out into the street. And everyone kind of watched and kind of went, ooh, ah, and they came around and just started shooting people.
Did it take a minute to sink in what was happening?
I was froze. I could not move at all. Seeing people like that I never want to see it again.
Now, you're an athlete. You're playing
Yes, sir.
soccer out there,
Yes,
and
sir.
that's exactly the group of people they were targeting.
Right. And when they saw me, they started opening fire on us, all my friends.
They fired in your direction?
Yes, sir.
And were people around you hit?
And they weren't. 12 of us were saved by the grace of God.
What did you do? You froze momentarily, but then what'd you do?
We heard the bullets go by our ears, and then we just started running.
Where'd you run to?
Ran to a local neighbor we didn't know. We flagged a car down, and they led us to their house.
And Joshua, where were you?
I was in the library doing my math homework.
And they went to the library. That's where the greatest number of bodies are. Were you there when they came in and started shooting?
Yes.
You got a baseball jacket on. You are an athlete. You play for the baseball team.
Yes.
Some people said that they were shooting at athletes who had sports caps on.
Yeah. When they first came in, they said, all the jocks, please stand up, and nobody stood up. And they said, all the jocks in here are dead. If you have a hat on, if you have a white T-shirt with any sports emblem on it, you're dead.
What were you wearing?
Blue shorts and a blue shirt. Luckily, I wasn't wearing my baseball hat.
Did they then start shooting while you were there?
Yeah. Yes.
What did you see?
At first, I didn't see anything until they came to the middle section, because they were over in the other sections.
Tell me how big this library is. I mean, is it a huge room?
Yeah, I mean,
or
it's
is it...
relatively big. Yeah, it's it's pretty big.
So you could be removed in the room from where they were.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, they started in that one section of the room.
Yeah, they started in the section room, and then they just worked their way around the room, and they eventually moved it in the middle section. By the time they got close enough, they were one row over and a desk back, and there was a gentleman underneath the desk, and they shot him. And as they walked by, they looked at me, and they kept on walking.
Was it very deliberate the way they shot, or were they simply spraying bullets, or were they picking people out to try to kill?
It looked like they were picking people out, because some people they would shoot, some people they wouldn't. There was a time in the middle section where they saw one of their friends, and they told him, get up and get out of here. So he got up, and he goes, all right, I'm out of here, and he ran out. And then they proceeded on with what they were doing.
How long were you in the room?
Probably about 45 minutes.
And they were there the whole time?
Yes.
Did you think, I'm going to die here?
Yeah. I didn't think I was going to get out of it. I was waiting. I thought they were going to be there forever. I was just waiting for my turn to be next. I was waiting for a sharp pain on my side.
We want to talk to some more of you, including you, Crystal. We're going to ask you to stand by. We have more half hours of this program, so we'll come back at 7:30 and talk to you, okay? Thanks very much. You all doing okay? You're doing okay. All right. We'll take a break. Good Morning America continues. In the last half hour, we were talking to 3 students at Columbine High School who saw what happened yesterday. Indeed, were very much a part of what happened and had a very chilling day. And we were talking to them, didn't have enough time to finish with them, and so we wanted to continue talking with them in this half hour. I'm joined by Crystal Woodman, by Joshua Lapp, and by Justin Woods. And we were talking to you, Joshua, before we had to go away, and you were talking about the scene in the library. You were in there. And I want a sense of whether they were walking around and deliberately shooting individuals, or were they simply shooting around the room?
By the way they were doing, they were picking out certain people that appealed to be jocks or of that sort. Because when they were in the middle section, they came up to somebody and they realized it was their friend, and they let him go. And if they could tell that it was their friend, they had to be looking at the faces and telling who it was.
So they would shoot someone and then stop shooting and walk over and pick out another student. And what were they saying to those students?
There was a little black kid that I'm pretty good friends with, and excuse the language, but they said, there's that little nigger. It's 3 shots. It paused. They go, is he dead? The other one paused, and the other one said, yeah, he's dead. And I mean, you could say it's a racial thing, which it appeared to be because it was towards jocks and
then you said they walked over to a girl and asked her if she believed in Christ?
She believed in God, and she paused. She didn't know what to answer. So she said, yeah, and they go, why? And they proceeded to shoot her.
Did they say anything? Did anybody talk back to them?
There was one, she said, why are you doing this? Why are you killing these people? And they just said, because we've wanted to for a long time. And I believe that they shot her, because that's all we heard from her.
Now, you were huddled under the table all this time, and you said you were waiting for that sharp pain in your side. At what point did you know I'm going to be able to get out of here?
When they walked out of the library, I had a sense that I might be able to get out of this.
They walked out of the library?
They walked out of the library to the hall and started shooting out more windows. At that time, we proceeded to get up and we ran out.
And you ran out?
The back door.
Crystal, where were you yesterday?
I was in the library as well.
You were, and what were you doing?
Just hiding under a table.
Well, when did you realize that they came in and they started shooting and you realized right away what was happening?
Yes, it took a while to hit me. I thought it was a joke at first, but then I heard people screaming and I knew it was for real.
So you got immediately under a table?
Yes.
You were huddled with other students?
Yes, one of my good friends just had me in his arms and he said he'd take the bullet for me.
He was hugging you and trying to protect you. Now tell me, Joshua gave us some sense of what was going on, but tell me what you saw.
I did not want to look around. I had my head down and I just listened. I just heard things, just horrifying things.
Could you see, if you're huddled under the table, could you see their legs as they walked around the room?
Yeah, one pushed a chair in to the table that I was under and it hit my arm. So I knew they were right there.
Were they shooting people right in your vicinity?
Yes.
And what were they saying?
They were just like, they thought it was just funny. They just were glad that they were getting their revenge. They were just like, who's next? Who's ready to die? And they were just like, we've waited to do this our whole lives. And it was just, and every time they'd shoot someone, they'd holler like it was like exciting.
Were they yelling or were they talking in very calm, chilling tones?
It was just very, they just chilling tones. I
Really?
mean, yeah, they weren't yelling. They were just talking.
Talking. I suspect you're never going to forget this.
No, I can't get the visions and their voices out of my head.
When they went out in the hall, Joshua and some others were able to run away. Is that when you got away as well?
Yes.
And where did you go? Did you know where to run, or were you just panicked?
Well, I just got up and I ran out the nearest exit because that's where everyone else was going.
And when they went out in the hall, were they shooting out there?
Yes, I could hear shots.
Did any of you get a very good look at them yesterday? We heard they were wearing masks. Were they wearing masks?
Not from what I saw, and I don't think they ever were.
Were you able to see their faces?
One of them, definitely. That Dylan.
Did you? I'm sorry?
It was Dylan. I don't know his last name.
Dylan Klebold?
Right.
Klebold, yeah.
I definitely saw him. I mean, eye to eye when he shot at all my friends.
Is this group, this trench coat mafia, very well known around the school?
Well, I've been there for like 3 months now, and I've heard a little bit, but not much with it, and I kind of stayed away from the people that were there. I didn't really think anything of it, but now the pieces are coming together, and I understand.
Well, when you see them in these trench coats walking around the school, I mean, what kind of an aura did they have about them?
They thought that they kind of act like they were untouchable. I mean, they just walked down the hall. They wouldn't move out of anybody's way. Everybody had to move out of their way, type of deal. I mean, you didn't know what was under those trench coats, so you just got out of their way. I mean, you didn't argue with them. You kind of listened to them because you didn't know what they had.
They were always mad, you told me.
Yeah, they were always mad. I mean, you know, you'd go up to them and some people would say hi to them, you know, and they just get in their face and start yelling at them. I mean,
you said when you saw them yesterday in the library, one of them had blood on his mouth?
Yeah, it was around his mouth. It wasn't like splatter from, you know, being too close. It was like around the mouth, like if you ate a chocolate bar and you got chocolate on your mouth.
Right.
It was just like that. So, I mean...
Don't know how it got there.
No. The only thing that I can think of is maybe eating something. That's just
Who
what
knows?
I said. Yeah, I don't know.
I thank all of you. That was a very hard day, and it's one that's going to stick with you, as Crystal says, for a long, long, long time. You all take care. The motives of Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold remain a mystery, although investigators have formed theories based on what was found in the killers' homes and on their personal computers. The words psychopath and depression figure prominently in the experts' findings. But an analysis of Columbine and other school shootings by the U.S. Secret Service says there is no typical profile for the perpetrators of this kind of violence. There are no specific clues. What parents and teachers should watch out for, says the report, or any disturbing changes in behavior. I'm Charles Gibson. Thank you for watching this edition of The Day It Happened.